For 2 decades, my father labeled me an accident and worshipped my brother. At Thanksgiving dinner, he slid a DNA test toward me like a punchline. Let's find out if you're even mine. So I did it. A few weeks later, the results arrived. I sent them to every relative. My mother collapsed. My father froze mid-bite because the truth showed I was the only biological child he ever had. Can you imagine being told your entire life that you're a burden, a mistake? What if the very proof demanded to humiliate you, the ultimate insult thrown in front of everyone you knew, instead shattered their world and exposed a 35-year lie? Because that's exactly what happened when my father, Arthur Vance, handed me a DNA test kit on Thanksgiving. His words still echo. Prove you're even my daughter. That moment, it was supposed to be my public execution. Instead, it became his undoing. For as long as I can remember, my place in the Vance household was clear. I was second best. My father, Arthur Vance, built Vance Holdings from nothing into a multi-million-dollar empire. He called it his firstborn, his true legacy. I was just Eleanor, born 3 years before his real son, my brother Brendan. The favoritism wasn't subtle. On my 16th birthday, I got a used SAT prep book. Maybe this will help you amount to something, the note read. That same year, Brendan got a brand new luxury car just for passing his driver's test. When I graduated with honors in computer science, Arthur's response was a lukewarm, well, at least you'll be employable. But when Brendan barely scraped through with a marketing degree from a state school, Arthur threw a lavish party for 200 people, declaring him the future of Vance Holdings. By 2024, I'd spent 15 years as a software engineer at a Fortune 500 company, developing systems that saved millions. Brendan, he'd been vice president of operations at Vance Holdings for 5 years, despite never successfully completing a single project without someone else cleaning up his mess. Yet, in Arthur's eyes, Brendan was building the family legacy. I was just there. Brendan is the future of Vance Holdings. My father would beam at every company event, his hand firmly on Brendan's shoulder. As for Eleanor, well, at least she has a steady job. The worst part wasn't just the dismissal. It was how everyone accepted it. Relatives, friends, even my mother, Sylvia. They all played along, perpetuating the narrative that Brendan was destined for greatness, while I was lucky to be included at all. The company retreat in August 2023 should have been my breaking point. I just finished developing an inventory management system that would save Vance Holdings $2 million annually. I'd worked nights and weekends for 3 months, missing family dinners, canceling plans, all because Arthur said the company needed this. At the retreat's gala dinner, Arthur stood before 150 employees and partners, ready to make his announcements. First, I want to recognize the exceptional work done on our new inventory system, he began, and my heart inexplicably lifted for a split second. Brendan has once again proven why he's our vice president of operations. This system will revolutionize how we work. Brendan, who had literally asked me what inventory management meant 3 weeks prior, stood and waved to the applause. I sat frozen. My mother, Sylvia, beside me, her hand briefly touching mine under the table, not in comfort, but in warning. Stay quiet. Don't make a scene. Later that night, I confronted Brendan at the hotel bar. You know I built that entire system. He just shrugged, taking a sip of his top-shelf whiskey, charged to the company card. Dad says leadership is about delegation. I delegated to you. That's what good executives do. He grinned, that Vance smirk identical to Arthur's. I took credit for managing you well. Besides, you're not really built for the spotlight, are you? Some people are meant to be leaders. Others are meant to be reliable. Then my mother appeared, as she always did when tension arose. But instead of defending me, she just looked at me with that familiar expression, something between pity and guilt. Let's not ruin a lovely evening, she said softly, though her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her wineglass. October 2024 brought the news that would ultimately seal everyone's fate. Arthur had summoned Brendan to a meeting with Mr. Albright, the family's estate attorney. Brendan, incapable of keeping good news to himself, called me immediately after. Guess who's about to be very, very wealthy, he sang into the phone. Dad just updated his will. 85% of everything, the company, the properties, the investments, all going to a sole biological son. That's literally what it says, Eleanor. Sole biological son. The remaining 15% was for me, with a kicker. I couldn't sell my shares for 10 years. He wanted to make sure I couldn't cash out and abandon the family legacy. Mr. Albright suggested it. Brendan continued, oblivious to my stunned silence. Something about making the will ironclad, preventing challenges from gold diggers or distant relatives. Dad loved it. Said blood is what matters in the end. That evening, a courtesy email arrived from Albright Law Firm. There it was, in black and white. 85% of all assets, shares, and controlling interest in Vance Holdings shall transfer to my sole biological son, Brendan Vance. That was a whopping $38 million based on the company's current valuation. My 15% would be worth about $7 million, nothing to scoff at. But with a 10-year restriction, I'd be forced to watch Brendan run the company into the ground, powerless. But that phrase, sole biological son, it kept nagging at me. Why not just say my son, Brendan? Why the emphasis on biological? November arrived with a board meeting that felt more like a coronation. Arthur invited me to attend, not as a participant, but as family support. I sat in the corner as he presented Brendan as his succession plan to 7 board members. Brendan has been instrumental in our recent technological advances, Arthur announced, gesturing to a projection showing my inventory system's metrics. Under his leadership, we've saved $2 million this quarter alone. Board member Ms. Harding, who had known me since I was 10, glanced my way with raised eyebrows. She knew exactly who built that system. But she said nothing. I propose we officially designate Brendan as CEO-elect to take over when I step down next year. The vote was unanimous. After the meeting, I overheard 2 junior executives in the break room. Did you hear? Once Brendan takes over, he's planning a full restructuring. Apparently, anyone who's not his people should start updating their resumes. What about Eleanor? The other asked. Especially Eleanor. Brendan told Brad she's been riding on family connections for too long. Says it's time for merit-based employment. I almost laughed. Brendan, who couldn't code a simple HTML page, talking about merit-based employment. That night, Sylvia called. Thanksgiving is in 2 weeks, she said, her voice strangely flat. Your father wants everyone there. The whole family, some business partners. He says he has something special planned. Special like Brendan's CEO announcement special? There was a long pause. Just be prepared for anything, Eleanor. And maybe don't take everything so personally. But everything was about to become very, very personal. Thanksgiving at the Vance estate was always a performance, but this year felt different. 27 people gathered in the dining room, a scene out of a magazine. Family members, Arthur's business partners, even David Thorne, his former CFO, mysteriously fired back in 1990, but still somehow in Arthur's social circle. Arthur stood at the head of the table, crystal glass raised, his face beaming with pride. Before we feast, a toast. To family, to blood, to legacy. His eyes found Brendan. To my real son, who carries the Vance name forward with honor. Everyone raised their glasses. I raised mine, too, the words real son echoing in my ears. Then came the gifts. Arthur, in his infinite generosity, had decided on early Christmas presents. Brendan received a Rolex Submariner for the future CEO, Arthur announced. My cousins got various expensive gadgets. Then Arthur reached me, holding a small box with a red bow. The room quieted. And for Eleanor, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Something I think we've all been curious about for years. I opened the box. Inside was an Ancestry DNA kit. The room went silent. Someone gasped. My mother's wine glass slipped, shattering on the floor. Arthur's smile was razor sharp. Just to put all those family jokes to rest. Let's see if you're really mine, shall we? I mean, you've never quite fit in, have you? Maybe this will explain why. 27 pairs of eyes watched me. Brendan was actually laughing. Oh, come on, Eleanor, it's just a joke. Unless you're worried about something. I looked at the kit, then at Arthur, then at my mother frantically trying to clean up the wine with shaking hands. You want me to take this test? I asked, my voice eerily calm. If you're really a Vance, you've got nothing to hide, he sneered. I stood up slowly, the DNA kit in my hands. The room held its breath. "I'll take your test," I said, my voice carrying across the silent dining room. "On one condition." Arthur's smirk widened. "You're hardly in a position to make conditions. It's only fair that Brendan takes one, too," I continued, turning to my brother. "After all, if we're verifying bloodlines for the family records, shouldn't we be thorough?" Brendan's laughter cut off abruptly. "That's ridiculous. Everyone knows I'm Dad's son. I look just like him. Then you have nothing to worry about." I echoed his earlier words. "Unless you're worried about something." The room buzzed with whispers. Some business partners looked uncomfortable, but others seemed intrigued by the drama. Arthur's jaw tightened. "This is unnecessary. Brendan doesn't need to prove anything." "But I do," I asked, looking him straight in the eye. "In front of everyone here? Either we both take the test, or I walk out right now, and you can explain to everyone why your joke only applies to one child." David Thorne spoke up from his seat near the window. "Seems fair to me, Arthur. What's good for one should be good for both." My mother had gone pale, her hands gripping the edge of the table. This isn't necessary. It's Thanksgiving. We should be grateful for family. Not this." Arthur looked between us, calculating. His reputation was on the line now. Backing down would make him look weak. "Fine," he said finally. "Brendan will take the test, too, to prove what we all already know." Brendan shrugged, his confidence returning. "Whatever. This is stupid, but fine." I held up the kit. "One more thing. The results get announced at the company gala next month. Publicly. Since you wanted to make this public, let's go all the way." The next morning, we gathered in Arthur's home office. He'd ordered 2 more DNA kits overnight, not from Ancestry, but from Gennequery Labs, a medical-grade testing facility that provided legal documentation. "If we're doing this, we're doing it right," Arthur declared, as if the whole thing had been his idea. No room for doubt or error. Mr. Albright was present as a witness, along with Ms. Harding from the board, whom Arthur had called to ensure transparency. I also insisted on recording the entire process on my phone, which Arthur allowed with an eye roll. We each swabbed our cheeks, sealed our samples, and signed the chain of custody forms. Mr. Albright notarized everything. "The results take 3 to 4 weeks, the Gennequery instructions stated. "Legal documentation will be provided with all results." "Perfect timing," Arthur said. "The company gala is December 15th. We'll have the results by then." As I placed my sample in the prepaid shipping box, Brendan leaned over. "You realize you're just embarrassing yourself more, right? When these come back, everyone will know Dad was right about you all along." "Maybe," I said, sealing the box. "Or maybe everyone will finally know the truth." My mother, who had been silent throughout the process, suddenly spoke. "I need to lie down. I'm not feeling well." She left the room quickly, but not before I caught her expression in the mirror by the door. Pure terror. That evening, she started taking anxiety medication. I know because I saw the prescription bottle on her bathroom counter when I stopped by to check on her. The prescription was dated that day, November 29th, 2024. Something was about to surface that had been buried for 35 years, and my mother knew exactly what it was. 3 days after we sent the tests, my mother showed up at my apartment unannounced. She'd never done that in the 5 years I'd lived there. "We need to talk," she said, pushing past me into the living room. "About the tests. You need to call the lab and cancel them." "Why would I do that?" She paced my small living room, wringing her hands. "Some things are better left buried, Eleanor. Some truths don't help anyone. Like the truth about why Dad has treated me like garbage for 20 years. She stopped pacing and looked at me with those guilty eyes I'd seen so many times. "Your father was on a business trip in 1989. The Peterson Project in Chicago. He was gone for 3 months. Brenda was born in January 1990. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Do the math, Eleanor." I did. Brendan would have been conceived in April 1989. Dad was in Chicago. "Yes," she confirmed, sinking onto my couch. "But David Thorne wasn't." David Thorne, Arthur's former CFO, the man who'd been at Thanksgiving dinner, the one who supported my suggestion that Brendan also take the test. "You and Thorne." She pulled an old photograph from her purse. Her and Thorne at some company function, standing closer than colleagues should. It only happened once. I was lonely. Arthur was always gone or at the office. David was kind to me. But then I found out I was pregnant. And the timing. Arthur never questioned it. Brendan looked enough like him, acted like him. Does Thorne know? I don't know. Maybe he suspects. He's never said anything. She grabbed my hands. Please, Eleanor, cancel the tests. I'll talk to your father. Make him treat you better. Just please don't destroy our family. I didn't cancel the tests. How could I? 20 years of being called a mistake. And now I knew why my mother had never defended me. Her guilt had kept her silent while Arthur destroyed my self-worth day by day. December arrived, with preparations for the company's 25th anniversary gala in full swing. The event would be held at the Ritz-Carlton Ballroom on December 15th. 350 guests, including investors, partners, and journalists from the Metro Business Weekly. Arthur had been broadcasting his plans to anyone who'd listen. It's going to be the event of the year, he told me during a mandatory family dinner. I'll be announcing Brendan as my official successor, and we'll put those silly DNA questions to rest once and for all. 2 birds, 1 stone. The DNA results were due December 14th. Dr. Sarah Chen from GenEquity Labs had confirmed via email that the results would be ready and would include full legal documentation, suitable for court proceedings if needed. Why court proceedings? I'd asked during our phone call. It's standard for inheritance or custody disputes, she explained. Your father specifically requested the legal package when he called to upgrade the testing. Of course he had. Arthur wanted ironclad proof that I wasn't his, probably to justify writing me out of the will entirely. I spent those weeks preparing something of my own. A simple PowerPoint presentation. Just 10 slides. Nothing fancy. Just spaces for test results, some highlighted sections of the will, and a few email screenshots. I saved it on a USB drive that I kept in my pocket at all times. My mother called 17 times in those 2 weeks. I didn't answer once. Brendan sent cocky texts about practicing his CEO speech. Arthur sent a reminder to dress appropriately for the gala. The storm was coming, and they had no idea they'd created it themselves. December 14th, 3 p.m. The email from GenEquity Labs arrived while I was in my office, supposedly working, but really just staring at my inbox, refreshing every 30 seconds. Subject, DNA test results. Legal documentation package attached. My hands shook as I opened the PDF. 3 test results, each with its own detailed breakdown. Eleanor Vance, biological daughter of Arthur Vance. Probability of paternity, 99.987%. My heart stopped. Then I scrolled to the next page. Brendan Vance, not biologically related to Arthur Vance. Probability of paternity, 0%. But it was the 3rd page that made me gasp out loud. Brendan Vance, biological son of David Thorne. Probability of paternity, 99.991%. They'd run Brendan's sample against David Thorne's DNA from their commercial database. Apparently, Thorne had taken a gene ancestry test years ago, and when you agree to their terms, they can use your DNA for family matching services. I read the results 5 times. Not because I didn't believe them, but because suddenly everything made sense. The guilt in my mother's eyes. Arthur's insistence that I wasn't really his. He'd been projecting his subconscious doubts about Brendan onto me for 2 decades. The irony was so perfect it felt like fiction. The son he'd worshipped, groomed, handed everything to on a silver platter wasn't even his. While the daughter he tortured, dismissed, and tried to humiliate with a DNA test. I was his only biological child. I forwarded the results to my personal attorney with one question. Given the will's language about sole biological son, what happens to the inheritance? Her response was immediate. If proven accurate, Brendan inherits nothing. The clause becomes void. As the only biological child, you would have grounds to contest the entire will. Tomorrow's gala was about to become very, very interesting. I spent the rest of December 14th crafting my presentation with surgical precision. 10 slides that would dismantle 20 years of lies in 10 minutes. Slide 1. A photo of our family at last year's company gala. Arthur's arm around Brendan. Me standing to the side, barely in frame. Slide 2. The title, DNA Results, as requested by Arthur Vance. Slides 3 to 5. My results, blown up large enough for the back of the ballroom to read. Each percentage highlighted. The Genequery Labs logo prominent. Dr. Chen's certification signature clear. Slides 6 to 8. Brendan's results. The 0% probability of Arthur's paternity in 72-point font. Then the Thorn match, equally enlarged. Slide 9. The Will's exact language, with sole biological son, highlighted in yellow. Slide 10. An email from Mr. Albright, sent an hour ago after I'd forwarded him the results. Based on these certified results, the inheritance clause regarding Brendan Vance would be legally void. The estate would need to be redistributed according to intestate succession laws, or the will would need to be rewritten. I also prepared backup documentation. The full Genequery report, the video of our sample collection, the notarized chain of custody forms. Everything loaded onto 3 separate USB drives, plus backed up to the cloud. At 11 p.m., I sent an email to Ms. Harding and 3 other board members. Please attend tomorrow's gala. There will be an important announcement regarding the company's future leadership that directly affects shareholder interests. Then I turned off my phone, poured myself a glass of wine, and practiced my speech one more time. This isn't about revenge, I said to my reflection. This is about truth. This is about justice. This is about finally getting what I deserve. Tomorrow, the Vance dynasty would crumble, and I would be the only Vance left standing. Visual. Cuts to Eleanor, now dressed for the gala, looking composed but with fire in her eyes. December 14th, midnight. My phone, which I turned back on briefly, showed 17 missed calls from my mother, 5 from Brendan, and none from Arthur. There were also texts. Mom, Eleanor, please answer. We need to talk. Mom, I know you got the results. Please. Mom, don't do this. And Brendan, why is Mom crying? She won't tell me what's wrong. This is about tomorrow, isn't it? Whatever you're planning, it won't work. Dad says you're just jealous. Pathetic. I turned the phone off again and went to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. I kept thinking about all the moments that led to this. Every dismissive comment. Every stolen achievement. Every time I'd been told I wasn't good enough, wasn't really family, wasn't worthy of the Vance name. At 3 a.m., I got up and looked at the presentation one more time. For a moment, just a moment, I considered my mother's plea. This would destroy her marriage, Brendan's entire identity, Arthur's carefully constructed legacy. Then I remembered last year's Christmas, when Arthur had given Brendan a luxury watch and me a gift card to a discount store. I remembered him telling investors I was just the IT help when I'd saved his company $2 million. I remembered 20 years of being called a mistake. I added one final slide to the presentation. A quote, "The truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off." Outside, snow began to fall, covering Greenwich in a blanket of white. By tomorrow night, everything would be different. The Vance family, as we knew it, would no longer exist. I finally fell asleep at 5 a.m., clutching the USB drive like a talisman, ready for the reckoning that had been 20 years in the making. The Ritz-Carlton ballroom glittered with Christmas decorations and the who's who of Connecticut's construction industry. 350 guests mingled over. Champagne and caviar, celebrating Vance Holdings' 25 years of success. I arrived in a black cocktail dress, appropriate but understated, exactly as Arthur would expect. He'd seated me at table 12, in the back corner with distant relatives and plus ones. Brendan, of course, held court at the VIP table with Arthur, my mother, and the board members. Arthur took the stage at 8 p.m. sharp, commanding attention in his custom tuxedo. 25 years ago, I started this company with nothing but ambition and the determination to build a legacy. Tonight, I'm proud to announce that legacy will continue through my son, Brendan Vance. Applause filled the room. Brendan stood, waving like a politician, his smile broad and confident. Family, Arthur continued, is everything. Blood is thicker than water. And Brendan is my blood, my heir, my future. I noticed David Thorne sitting at table 3, his expression unreadable as he watched Arthur's performance. Before I officially announce Brendan as CEO-elect, I want to address something. Arthur's eyes found me in the back. As many of you know, we recently did some family DNA testing, a little Thanksgiving fun that got out of hand. But I'm happy to report that all questions about our family tree have been answered. My hand moved to the USB drive in my purse. So, without further ado, I stood up, my voice carrying across the ballroom. I'd like to share those DNA results with everyone. Since you brought it up publicly at Thanksgiving, it's only fair we resolve it publicly here. The room turned to stare. Arthur's smile flickered but held. I'm sure that's not necessary, Eleanor. I walked through the ballroom, past 25 tables of stunned guests, my heels clicking against the marble floor. Each step felt like a mile, but I kept my shoulders back, my head high. May I first? I gestured to the laptop connected to the massive LED screens flanking the stage. Arthur's jaw tightened. Eleanor, this is neither the time nor... You made it the time when you gave me that DNA kit in front of everyone, I said, loud enough for the entire room to hear. You wanted answers. I have them. Brendan laughed from his table. This is desperate, even for you. Miss Harding spoke up from the board table. Let her speak, Arthur. You did make this public at Thanksgiving. Several of us were there. Trapped by his own arrogance, Arthur stepped aside. 5 minutes, then security will escort you out. I plugged in my USB drive, my hand steady despite my racing heart. The first slide appeared on the screens, our family photo. For 20 years, I began. I've been told I'm worthless, that I don't belong, that I'm a mistake. I clicked to the next slide. DNA results, as requested by Arthur Vance. So, let's see who really belongs in this family. The room was silent, except for the hum of the projector. Remember that DNA kit you gave me as a joke? I looked directly at Arthur. Remember insisting Brendan take one too, to prove he's your real son? My mother stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Eleanor, please. The results came in yesterday. I continued, clicking to slide 3. Let's start with mine. The screen displayed my results. Probability of paternity, 99.987%. Turns out I am definitely Arthur Vance's biological daughter. But that's not the interesting part, I said, clicking to the next slide. Brendan's results filled the screens. The 0% probability of Arthur's paternity might as well have been written in fire. The ballroom erupted. Gasps. Whispers. Chairs scraping as people stood for a better view. Arthur stood frozen at the side of the stage, his face draining of color. That's fake! Brendan shouted, jumping to his feet. This is fabricated. She's lying. I clicked to the next slide. David Thorne's match. 99.991%. David Thorne slowly stood from his seat, his face a mask of shock and something else, recognition, perhaps, as if pieces were finally falling into place after 35 years. My mother collapsed back into her chair, her hand over her mouth. She didn't faint as I'd expected. She just sat there, tears streaming down her face. The secret she carried for so long, finally exposed. According to the will Arthur signed in October, I clicked to the next slide, showing the highlighted text. 85% of everything goes to his sole biological son. The final slide appeared, Mr. Albright's email confirmation. But Arthur doesn't have a biological son. He has a biological daughter. Me. The mistake. The disappointment. The one who never belonged. Arthur finally found his voice. This can't be. The lab made an error. Genequery Labs doesn't make errors. Dr. Sarah Chun stood from table 7. I hadn't known she'd be here, but Miss Harding had apparently invited her. I supervised these tests personally. I ran them 3 times to be certain. The results are accurate. The Metro Business weekly photographer was frantically taking pictures. Board members huddled in heated discussion. And Brendan looked like his entire world had just imploded. Because it had. This is a setup, Brendan shouted, pushing through the crowd toward the stage. She paid someone off. This isn't real. Dr. Chin walked to the microphone with calm authority. I'm Dr. Sarah Chun, Director of Genetic Services at Genequery Labs. I stake my professional reputation on these results. We maintained strict chain of custody, which was witnessed and notarized by Mr. Albright. Mr. Albright stood, reluctantly. The sample collection was properly witnessed and documented. I have the video evidence and signed forms. Furthermore, Dr. Chin continued, Mr. Thorne's DNA was already in our database from a test he took 3 years ago. The match with Brendan Vance was discovered through our standard relative matching protocol. Ms. Harding stood at the board table. Arthur, given this information, we need to convene an emergency board meeting tonight. You can't do this. Arthur's composure finally cracked completely. This company is mine. Brendan is my son. I raised him. You raised him, I agreed, still at the microphone. But he's not your biological son. And according to your own will, that's all that matters. Your words, not mine. I pulled out my phone and showed the email I'd sent to the board 5 minutes before taking the stage, the full Genequery report, the video evidence, everything. The board has all the documentation, I announced. So does the Metro Business Weekly. I checked my phone 30 seconds ago. Brendan lunged toward me, but security intercepted him. The same security Arthur had threatened to use on me. You destroyed everything. Brendan screamed as they held him back. You vindictive. I didn't destroy anything, I said calmly. I just told the truth. The DNA test was your father's idea, remember? Arthur grabbed the microphone, his hands shaking. This changes nothing. I'm still the CEO. I'm still the majority shareholder. Actually, Ms. Harding announced, having just finished a hushed phone call. The board has voted, 7-2. You're temporarily suspended, pending a full investigation into potential fraud regarding the misrepresentation of company leadership succession. You can't. We can and we did, Ms. Harding continued. You've been grooming someone with no legitimate claim to the company while overlooking your actual heir. Our shareholders could sue us into oblivion. Arthur turned to my mother, who still sat frozen at the VIP table. Sylvia, tell them this is a mistake. Tell them. She stood slowly, her voice barely audible, even with the microphone. It's true. All of it. David and I. It was just once. I'm so sorry. The room exploded again. David Thorne was surrounded by people asking questions. Brendan had to be physically restrained from charging at Thorne, screaming, You knew. You had to have known. The lawyers will sort this out. Arthur said desperately. The will can be contested. With what grounds? I asked. You specified biological son. You insisted on DNA tests. You created this situation entirely on your own. I turned to address the room one final time. For 20 years, this man told me I was worthless, that I didn't deserve the Vance name. He built his golden boy up on a foundation of lies while tearing me down with what he thought was the truth. But the real truth is poetic justice. Security began escorting Brendan out as he continued shouting threats and profanities. Arthur stood alone on the stage, his empire crumbling around him, finally understanding what it felt like to be the one who didn't belong. The emergency board meeting convened in the hotel's conference room at 10 p.m. I wasn't supposed to be there, but Ms. Harding insisted I attend as the only legitimate Vance heir present. The vote was swift and decisive. Arthur was removed as CEO, effective immediately. Brendan's position as vice president was terminated with 2 weeks severance, the minimum required by law. We need stable leadership, Ms. Harding announced. Someone who understands the company and has proven competence. The board unanimously appointed Eleanor Vance as interim CEO. I hadn't expected that. I'm not sure I'm ready. You built the system that saved us $2 million, board member Mr. Chin interrupted. You have an engineering degree and 15 years of corporate experience. You're more qualified than Brendan ever was. Mr. Albright had already drawn up the emergency paperwork. Based on the DNA results and the will's specific language, the 85% controlling interest transfers to you immediately. The remaining 15% stays with Arthur until the divorce proceedings determine otherwise. Within 48 hours, I would control $38 million in assets. Arthur, who had been silent during the proceedings, finally spoke. You planned this. You orchestrated everything. No, I said simply. You did. I just took the test you demanded. The truth did the rest. As we signed the papers, Miss Harding pulled me aside. Your father built something impressive here, but he let his ego poison it. Don't make the same mistake. I won't, I assured her. I'm not interested in dynasties or golden children. I just want to run a good company. Security briefed me on the building's access codes. Arthur's had already been deactivated. Tomorrow morning, I would walk into Vance Holdings not as the disappointment daughter, but as the owner. The reversal was complete. By morning, the story had gone viral. Vance dynasty crumbles. DNA test reveals shocking family secret, ran as the Metro Business Weekly's lead story. Someone had leaked the video of my presentation. Within 48 hours, it had 2.3 million views and climbing. The comment sections were brutal, but mostly aimed at Arthur. Poetic justice at its finest. He literally asked for this. Imagine being so arrogant you destroy your own legacy with a DNA test. Arthur's LinkedIn profile hemorrhaged followers. 15,000 lost in a week. Brendan's professional reputation was destroyed overnight. Screenshots of his past posts bragging about being the heir apparent became memes. The business impact was immediate and measurable. 3 major clients who'd been considering leaving due to Brendan's incompetence renewed their contracts when they heard about the leadership change. Stock value increased 8% in the first week under my leadership. I gave one interview to the Metro Business Weekly, keeping it professional. This company was built on hard work and innovation. We're returning to those values. The drama is over. Now we focus on business. But the media wouldn't let it go. The DNA test that destroyed a dynasty became a trending topic. Reddit threads dissected every angle. Someone even started a podcast about family business scandals with our story as the inaugural episode. David Thorne released a statement through his lawyer. I was unaware of Brendan's parentage until the DNA results were revealed. I'm willing to take responsibility and want to establish a relationship with my son if he's willing. Brendan's response, posted on Instagram before his account went private. I don't need any of you. I'll build my own empire. The empire he'd been handed was gone. The empire he built himself remained to be seen. My mother finally told the whole truth during our first conversation after the gala. We met at a coffee shop, neutral ground, away from the ruins of the Vance estate. Your father was never home, she said, staring into her latte. The Chicago project, then Denver, then Houston. David was kind. He listened. One night, after a company dinner where Arthur had called to cancel again, it just happened. Did Thorne know? I think he suspected when Brendan was born 6 weeks, early but fully developed. He never said anything. Arthur never questioned it. Brendan looked enough like him. Everyone said so. The divorce was swift and brutal. Connecticut's adultery laws meant my mother forfeited significant assets. She walked away with $12 million, less than she would have received otherwise. Arthur lost the house, half his remaining assets, and every shred of his reputation. Brendan filed a lawsuit for intentional infliction of emotional distress against me, claiming I deliberately destroyed his life. The judge dismissed it in 5 minutes. The plaintiff's father initiated the DNA testing. The defendant simply revealed the results. Case dismissed. Brendan refused Thorne's attempts at contact. He also refused the entry-level position Thorne offered at his investment firm, the only job anyone would offer him. Last I heard, he was living in a studio apartment in Stamford, selling insurance. I'm sorry, my mother said during that coffee meeting. For everything. For not protecting you. For letting my guilt keep me silent while Arthur hurt you. I know, I said. And I did know. But knowing and forgiving were different things. Can we try to rebuild something? Maybe, I told her. But not now. I need time to figure out who I am when I'm not the family disappointment. Vance Holdings, under my leadership, became what it should have always been, a meritocracy. I hired a new executive team based solely on competence, not connections. Half were women. A third were people of color. And all were brilliant. The inventory management system I developed was finally implemented properly, saving the projected $2 million annually. But more importantly, I instituted transparent attribution. Everyone's contributions were documented and credited. First quarter 2025 results spoke for themselves. Profits up 23%, employee satisfaction up 45%, and 3 major contracts secured that Arthur had lost due to Brendan's bungling. The Metro Business Weekly ran a follow-up piece, From DNA drama to corporate success, Eleanor Vance's transformation of Vance Holdings. I promoted Janet Rodriguez, who'd been Brendan's assistant and had actually done all his work, to vice president of operations. You've been doing the job for 5 years, I told her. It's time you got the title and salary. The company culture shifted dramatically. The fear-based hierarchy Arthur had cultivated was replaced with collaborative innovation. People stopped whispering in corridors and started speaking up in meetings. One of our biggest wins came from landing the Riverside Development Project, a $30 million contract Arthur had been chasing for 3 years. The client told me directly, "We were waiting for the leadership to change. We knew Brendan would ruin it, but we also knew you were the one really running things behind the scenes." During a company town hall, an employee asked how it felt to go from the shadows to the spotlight. "Like finally being able to breathe," I answered. "Honestly, this company was built on one man's ego. Now it's built on everyone's talent. That's why we're succeeding." The Vance name stayed on the building, but it meant something different now. Arthur's attempts to reclaim his life ranged from pathetic to desperate. The email started 2 weeks after the gala. "Eleanor, I realize I was wrong. You're the best daughter a father could ask for. Please, let's talk. Then, I built this company from nothing. You can't just erase me. Finally, I'm your father. That has to count for something." He tried entering the building one morning, but security turned him away. The footage of him arguing with the guards, insisting he owned the company, somehow made it onto social media, another humiliation in his growing collection. He hired 3 different law firms to challenge the will and the DNA results. Each case was dismissed. Mr. Albright, his own lawyer for 20 years, testified that the will's language was clear and unambiguous, and that Arthur had insisted on the biological son clause himself. The most pathetic attempt came when he showed up at a client dinner I was hosting. "My daughter's doing a wonderful job with my company," he announced to the table, trying to insert himself into the conversation. "Sir, this is a private event," security informed him. "I'm her father. You're not on the list now." He lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Fairfield, a 45-minute drive from the estate he'd once ruled. His LinkedIn profile listed him as consultant, with no company attached. His posts about resilience and rising from setbacks got fewer likes each time. Brendan had cut him off completely. My mother was gone. His business associates avoided him. The man who'd built his identity on legacy and blood had lost both. "I gave you everything," he wrote in his last email to me. I didn't respond. We both knew the truth. He'd given me nothing but pain. And in trying to prove I was nothing, he'd proven I was everything. 3 months after the gala, I agreed to meet Arthur. Once a month, lunch in a public place, with clear boundaries. "These are my terms," I told him at that first meeting. "You don't get to comment on my decisions. You don't get to take credit for my success. You don't get to pretend the past 20 years didn't happen. If you can't handle that, we don't meet at all." He'd aged 5 years in those 3 months. His hair completely gray now. His swagger replaced with a slight stoop. "I understand," he mumbled. Brendan was a different story. After sending threatening messages, including, "You'll pay for this. I'll destroy you like you destroyed me," I filed a restraining order. He was blocked on everything, legally prohibited from contacting me. My mother got limited contact, with conditions. I helped her find a therapist who specialized in family trauma and secret keeping. She was working through 35 years of guilt, and I was working through 20 years of neglect. "Forgiveness isn't a right," my therapist told me. "It's a gift, and you get to decide if and when to give it." I established the Eleanor Vance Foundation for Women in STEM, funded with $5 million from my inheritance. Every scholarship recipient would know they were supported by someone who understood what it felt like to be overlooked and underestimated. "Why are you helping him?" Miss Harding asked about my monthly lunches with Arthur. "I'm not helping him," I clarified. "I'm choosing to be the person I want to be, regardless of who he was. But trust, those have to be earned from zero. And he's still in the negative." The boundaries were clear, firm, and non-negotiable. For the first time in my life, I was in control of my relationship with my family. The external success was measurable. CEO of a $45 million company, respected in the industry, featured in Forbes 40 Under 40. But the internal transformation mattered more. I started therapy the week after the gala, working through 2 decades of gaslighting and emotional abuse. "You were the family scapegoat," my therapist explained. "Everything wrong was your fault. Everything right was someone else's achievement. That's not normal, and it's not okay." For the first time, I stopped apologizing for existing. I stopped prefacing my ideas with "this might be stupid, but..." I stopped shrinking myself to make others comfortable. I met Daniel at a charity fundraiser. He ran a non-profit for youth coding education. He knew my story. Everyone did. But he was interested in who I was now, not my family drama. "You're brilliant," he said on our third date. "And I'm not talking about the company or the money. You see solutions where others see problems." The Eleanor Vance Foundation launched with 30 scholarships in its first year. Each recipient got not just money, but mentorship. I personally met with every single one. They told me I wasn't smart enough for engineering. One recipient, Maria, told me, "My family said I should study something more suitable for women." Mine said I was a mistake, I shared. Now I run a $45 million company. Don't let anyone else define your worth. The nightmare stopped after 6 months. The anxiety attacks after 8. The constant need for validation after 10. One morning, I woke up and realized I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of judgment, not of failure, not of being found out as not good enough. I was Eleanor Vance, CEO, philanthropist, survivor. And for the first time in 38 years, that was exactly who I wanted to be. Standing in my CEO office 1 year later, I looked at the old family photo on my desk, not with bitterness, but with understanding. That scared, diminished girl in the corner of the frame had no idea what she was capable of. The DNA test that was meant to humiliate me had instead freed me. It proved that blood doesn't define family, but it can expose the lies we build our lives on. Arthur had been so certain I wasn't his that he projected that doubt onto me for 20 years, while never questioning the son who actually wasn't his. "Your father gave you a gift," my therapist had said. "Not intentionally, but he did. He showed you exactly who he was, publicly, undeniably. No more gaslighting, no more doubt. The truth set you free. The truth also taught me that when toxic people hand you a weapon, thinking it will destroy you, they often don't realize they're handing you the key to your freedom. Arthur's cruelty became my catalyst. His DNA test became my evidence. His public humiliation became my public vindication. But the most important lesson? Justice isn't revenge. It's finally getting what you always deserved. I didn't destroy Arthur. He destroyed himself with his own arrogance. I just refused to keep his secrets anymore. "Thank you for the DNA kit, Dad," I said to the photo, then placed it in my desk drawer. "It was the best investment you ever made in me." The Vance empire Arthur built on blood and favoritism was gone. In its place stood something stronger, a company built on merit, a leader who earned her position, and a woman who finally knew her worth. The mistake had become the only true Vance, and that was the greatest irony of all. Visual ends with Eleanor, confident and smiling subtly, looking out of her office window over the city, then cuts to a final title card. Eleanor, if you've ever felt like the black sheep or been undervalued by the very people who should lift you up, I want to hear your story. What's one moment you stood up for yourself against family pressure? Drop a comment below. Let's share our strength and stand together. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories of truth and triumph.